Howdy ho there, people. Episode 336 of The Vinyl Guide is brought to you by our friends at the Groove Washer. Record cleaners, record sleeves, and a whole lot more. The best protection for your vinyl collection. That's groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. And we're also brought to you today by AudiofileUSA.com. With over 42,000 used records in stock, visit the biggest online used record shop that ships worldwide. All excellent and near mint records. Search, dig, and load up the carts with delicious used vinyl at AudiofileUSA.com. And with that, on with the show. Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 336 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And this week we speak extensively to an incredibly important figure of modern music, certainly a huge influence on the California desert rock scene, Mr. Mario Lalli. Now, Mario, as you may know, is a founding member of Yawning Man, of Fatso Jetson, a member of the legendary band Across the River, a key organizer of the Desert Generator parties that brought to our attention bands like Caius, Fu Manchu, Queens of the Stone Age, Stoner, and more. And Mario is also a pioneer and an innovator, not just of music, but of facilitating an environment that enabled so many bands to develop, to find their footing, and ultimately to deliver the goods. And man, does Mario have stories. What started out as an hour-long conversation quickly doubled, and rather than cast aside some great stories, I decided to keep it going, so enjoy this conversation with an absolute California and music legend. Now, by the way, this isn't all. There is an extended and commercial-free version of this interview up at patreon.com/vinylguide. That's where you can support the show. $5 or $10 a month or even more. It buys me burritos and beer without the issue of sticking around after I eat them. Plus, you get early access to episodes, extended interviews, commercial-free versions, and the warm, fuzzy feelings that you're helping support this show. That's patreon.com/vinylguide, where you get to hear the rest of the show. By the way, everyone, I want you to write this down or put it in your phone right now. Check out the new reissue of Yawning Man's Rock Formation. It's up at ripple-music.com. You can get up there. I believe they may have some links to Fatso Jetson as well. You could also go to Mario's website, plasticcactus.com with one C. Between that and Ripple Music, t-shirts, merch, all sorts of stuff is up there. Grab the music, grab some other stuff too. Be generous with yourself. It's great music and supports the artists. That's Yawning Man and Fatso Jetson, ripple-music.com, and plasticcactus.com. Today, Mario's going to share all about his early days, his musical family, moving out to LA, struggling, starting up the Generator parties, some crazy stories about those parties, the destruction of his vinyl collection, what's up with the Fatso Jetson and Yawning Man recordings, reissues, and much, much more. Strap yourself in and enjoy this conversation. Plus, if you like this episode, please be sure to check out other episodes of the Vinyl Guide podcast, always free, and with interviews of the likes of Brant Bjork, episode 276 of the Vinyl Guide, John Dwyer of the OCs, episode 331, Dale Crover of Melvins, episode 305, Dave Lombardo of Slayer, Misfits, and Mr. Bungle, episode 243, Matt Pike of Sleep, episode 326, and lots more. Subscribe to The Vinyl Guide in your podcast app. Scroll, listen, and enjoy. Alrighty, with the upfronts done, let's get straight into our conversation with Mr. Mario Lalli. Mr. Mario.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me. When I saw the guests you've had, I was like, wow, man, really incredible archive of interviews.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, and so diverse too. Everybody from Carducci to Billy Gibbons and Mackie Osborne. My girlfriend is old friends with Mackie. And we were listening to her interview last night. But anyway, thanks for having me, man.
No, I'm wearing my Melvins gear right now.
All right.
Yeah, a large percentage of my wardrobe is Melvins and Mackie related.
I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mario, you've always been on my wish list. So thank you so much for agreeing to come
Wow.
on, because I've followed your career for many years. Every time I put on a project that you're part of, Yawning Man or Fatso, Jetson, or even the other day I was listening to the Across the River demos, and it just vibes with me somehow. It just does.
Yeah. Maybe we grew up listening to the same stuff, so
I reckon that's part of it. I mean, and I grew up in
sure.
California as well, not in the desert, but in Northern California. So
Right
yeah,
on.
I've always enjoyed your work. So
Thank you.
let's get straight to the record talk, because I would imagine you and I are kind of of the same age
Hmm.
and background. Are you a bit of a record nerd? Are you a collector?
I was,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a funny story. I didn't get obsessive about it, but I started collecting as a kid, and I really got into it when I discovered punk rock. So because everything was there was this element of discovering this rare, weird thing that, of course, my first experiences walking into a record store were like to buy, Kiss or Cheap Trick, or the Sabbath records, and stuff that you buy when you're a kid. But around 14, 15, when I discovered that these underground bands were making these records, and growing up in Palm Springs, it was a little difficult to be a serious record collector unless you had a driver's license. You can get to LA to some decent record stores, but there was one. Well, there was two. There was one called Record Rendezvous, which was where I bought my first big classic rock, the first Kiss record. We bought Cheap Trick records. We bought Sabbath, Hendrix. But my first records were given to me, gifted by my older brother and sister. My brother and sister, probably about 15 years older than me.
15, 1-5.
Yeah,
Okay.
my mom, they're half. From my mom's first marriage, they're half brother and sister. But they were both, like, my sister was into a lot of singer songwriter folk stuff. They were both hippies, and my brother was to hard rock and Zeppelin and Sabbath and some progressive rock and stuff. And you're right, Heat, Focus, Mountain. I got all those things really, really young. Some because I thought the record covers were cool, and others because my brother was he was really trying to influence me. Yeah.
Hmm.
And he was a classic heavy rocker from the 70s. So he turned me on to a lot of great stuff. But that gave me the bug to start the collection. And, I think any kids that got into music our age, that was how you listened. It wasn't, we were on our phones, and CDs were yet to come and stuff. So yeah, it was vinyl collecting. But when I started to get into the punk scene, that's when it became this adventure of seeking and finding and experimenting. And me and my friend Gary, we used to correspond with the Discord guys through the mail, with SST through the mail, Touch and Go, like all these. It was like this secret world that we kind of like discovered, and it made it really exciting. I collected up until the CD thing. Then I started buying CDs, and I had just as massive of a CD collection. And it was kind of unfortunate in a way, because it got me away from like seeking out the vinyl stuff. And a lot of the really great records from the 90s. I just had on CD, so I kind of missed the boat. And then, of course, as the band started, our first releases were CD only, of course. And then as vinyl started to come back into being an affordable option and people kind of learned the ropes of this again, I became fascinated with it all over again, but more producing it than collecting it, which is weird, so
I can understand the attraction of producing it as well, because vinyl production is an art in itself, not just the covers and the traditional kind of release art, but also the art that you could have on the vinyl, the splatters, the tie-ins. I would imagine for an artist like yourself, the project is only really complete when you have a vinyl record copy of it in your hand.
Oh, it's so exciting. I mean, I always get excited for the test pressing, and then when it finally, I do a lot of the layout I'll work with an artist. With Yawning Man, Gary has a lot of ideas for the content, the subject of the art, whether it's a photograph or an illustration. But I'll facilitate the layout. I kind of learned the ins and outs of Photoshop and Illustrator, and just started. In the old days, we used to literally, paste up stuff, glue and tape, and that made it even more amazing, because I just finished doing for a cover for the band Stoner, who I kind of help out. This is Brant York and Nick, and so I just went through that process with them. And it's awesome, man, because you send off those files and it comes back in this beautiful package, and the color variations they're doing now are so amazing. And now we're tying it into the color elements of the cover, and it's just really it's great.
So let's get in the Wayback Machine.
Okay,
let's go back. You actually grew up in a musical family, right? It was. Your parents were opera singers, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. My mom and dad were both accomplished opera singers. They toured with companies out of New York, Chicago, and their careers were short in a kind of professional touring aspect with various opera companies. But that's the nature of that business, really, on the level that they were at. It's very, very tough. It's tough to remain relevant, and you have to get work. You have to fit a role. You have to audition. You have to fit the role physically. You have to. It's acting, singing. There's incredible musicianship involved. So it's a tough thing to make a go of, and the more I learned about it as a kid, I was like, wow, I can't believe that they did as well as they did. But my dad had this, he was an incredible singer, very talented. And he realized the finite nature of the opera career. The post-career path is either you become a coach or you get into instruction in some way. Maybe you mentor young students. Maybe you get into some other aspect of it. It's a very complicated world. It's rock and roll seems so simple and like Ditch Digger compared to that world. But so he came up with this idea. He worked at the door of a place called the Asti in New York City when he was a kid. He's 18. He used to, because he was a singer, he wanted to be around it all the time. And the Asti was a singing restaurant. It had a piano in the dining room and a big bar scene. And the waiters all sang. The waiters were all like either working in a Broadway show down the street, or they were auditioning to try and become a singer. They're all, kind of in the business, but didn't have a career yet. So they were waiting tables or bartending, whatever. And this Austie had this incredible thriving scene. So my dad took a job as a doorman there, and it inspired him to take that idea on. So when he was about 22, the opera career was getting tough to keep up with. The touring opportunities weren't happening, and long waits between auditions and this. So him and a buddy of his from Massachusetts just threw all the shit in the car, and they went to Aspen, Colorado. They had heard Aspen was kind of a boom town, and we're talking 1952. So it was like dirt roads, and they were still tying horses up outside the bar and the hotel. Seriously, it was a cow town, And he found this restaurant bar space in one of the main little hotels downtown that was available. And he made a deal with the guys, and they went in there. He didn't know anything about, he knew how to cook, sort of, had a little experience with that, just as most young Italian guys did back then. They knew how to, throw some pasta on and make some veal cutlets or whatever, The idea was small menu, open the bar. He'd come out and sing some songs for the patrons. And that began he was still singing. When he passed away at 92 years old, he was still singing once a week at our club in Pasadena. So that from 1952 to 2012 or something, 2010. I mean, just a crazy run. But he figured out, my point being, is he figured out a way to do what he loved, but just another way to make it work,
Yeah.
It's like, if I can't go out and sing on somebody else's stage, I'll just make my own, And that influenced me in the way that when I was, coming up in the punk scene in Palm Springs, we didn't have a place to play, and we didn't know how to go do that whole thing in LA with the demo tapes and to show up and try to convince some bar owner or booking agent or talent buyer. We didn't even know any of that. We didn't know what the fuck any of that was. Mm-hmm. And the only gigs I ever got starting out were just because we knew some guy in a band. We knew the guys at Red Cross, or we knew one of the guys in the Mentors, or we knew the Black Flag guys or whatever. And they gave us hey, you guys want to come and play this party, or you want to come and play this show at the little, at Cafe de Grand or whatever. But when we had to do it our own back home, it was like, fuck, let's just do this ourselves, And so I got that kind of, like, I learned how to do that from my folks, because they're like, fuck it, we'll put on our own show.
Yeah.
But they every night they did. I was lucky to do once a month. They did it every fucking night. Yeah.
Did they coach you at all? Did they say, okay, well, you're going to, if this is what you love, this is what you like doing, and you want to try to make a go of it? Were they supportive of your choices?
Very supportive. They and to a certain extent. And then it was like, well, you're obviously not, this isn't working out. You're not doing what you thought you'd do. It's probably time to come home and work at the restaurant, in the kitchen. But yeah, fresh out of high school, 18 years old, graduated from India High School. 2 weeks later, I was in Santa Monica, Culver City, Santa Monica, looking for an apartment, because the idea was we got it. At the time, I had a band that was a good band. It was solid guys. It was Alfredo Hernandez, Scott Reeder, my friend Herb Leno, and
This is across the river, right?
Well, it's what would become Across the River. It was a band called Dead Issue, and we were convinced that we had to we had to get up to LA, get in that music scene up there so we could start playing like a real band, playing clubs, making a record, maybe doing these things. So we did. I found us an apartment. We all moved in together. Scott was going to UCLA at the time. He was a music major playing trombone. And Scott Reeder, the bass player that, went on to play in Caius. And, I got us this apartment. We all moved in. We all started. It was our first time, all of us away from home. So there was a lot of partying, a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of trying to figure out how to survive,
how to pay a light bill,
and how to not get parking tickets every day. Because when you grow up in the desert, you take for granted the space, the space you have to do life. For instance, rehearsal. So here we go from where we can play in our garages or bedrooms or whatever to an apartment in the middle of Culver City, with 3 neighbors on top of us, 2 on each side. We had to pay for rehearsal now. So now we got to find a place to rehearse. We got to figure out how we're going to get our shit back and forth. We got to pay $20 an hour, whatever it was. Whereas coming from we had all our stuff set up in a room 24/7. We just walk in the room and make music, So the LA was a huge wake up call. It was like, this is going to be a challenge, and it didn't really, like, the band didn't survive that challenge. The stuff of life. We were spoiled kids coming from the desert with all this time and space. When we got up to LA, there was no time and no space in between working, school, having to pay for rehearsal, had to get back and forth. It was a lot, but it set in motion stuff that, looking back, it was like all these incredible relationships were formed. We met the guys, we met the Red Cross dudes. We met the guys, we kind of connected with this weird scene that was like the SST group of people, not necessarily specifically the SST guys, but like we formed friendships with the McDonald's and some people that were affiliated with SST, including the musicians themselves, and Greg and Chuck and those guys, and that, like, that connection for us was so important, and we were so thrilled to meet those guys and be able to, like, start to do stuff around them and with them, because that was like one of probably the biggest influence on my group of friends, was that element of the punk scene coming from Hermosa Beach and the Black Flag crew, the SST group. And I mean, we, to this day, we have, these lasting friendships with guys like Joe Biza and Jack Brewer and all those key people we made connections with from that one little jaunt out there. But we only lasted in LA for a couple years, and then we moved back home.
So prior to moving to LA, did you already have generator parties going, or was that after you got back from LA?
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey everyone, let me tell you about AudiofileUSA.com. AudiofileUSA.com is a fantastic place to buy used records online. AudiofileUSA.com has a heap of inventory, like tens of thousands of records you can search through online, and they are all excellent and near mint quality. These are your final upgrades, beautiful records that you can enjoy for years to come. AudiofileUSA.com is a family-owned and operated business, and they work hard to find the absolute cleanest records in the world and make them available to you. Head up there now, AudiofileUSA.com, search and dig through their selection and find the deals. Get a box of love on its way to you now from AudiofileUSA.com. Now, I know that you know that the Groove Washer is the best record cleaner in the world. But did you know that Groove Washer now makes archival quality record sleeves too? Yep, the world's best record cleaner is now making some fantastic sleeves and record accessories for a limited time introductory offer. The Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves are absolutely fantastic, so head up there now and try them for yourself. Go to groovewasher.com and use discount code FINALGUIDE10. That's the Groove Washer record cleaners, record sleeves, and other protection for your record collection. That's groovewasher.com.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
So prior to moving to LA, did you already have generator parties going, or was that after you got back from LA?
The generator party idea started, so it was definitely after. Before, we played backyard parties a lot. I mean,
keggers,
backyard, but it's a totally different thing. It's like one thing to have somebody's backyard where you plug in to run the extension from the garage or whatever the fuck. And we did a lot of those. We did a lot of those. A lot of punk bands were coming down from LA. I broke my collarbone skanking at a party in Cathedral City, just crazy stuff happening in backyards all through our high school days. But the generator party idea started with my friend Dave Travis, who's another guy we met through the group of musicians affiliated with SST and the Red Cross crew. Met Dave, and we hit it off right away. Like, we were inseparable. We were just always, we were like-minded. We had a lot of stuff in common. And he loved to just get people together and do stuff. He had a little Honda 2000 watt generator. And because of this problem that I mentioned before of when you live in an apartment in Culver City, where do you go jam? Well, okay, you go to the rehearsal studio, it's $20. Got to get all your shit there. You got to figure. We're like, where can we just go and be free and go for it? I said, well, why don't we go cruise up Mulholland Drive into the Hollywood Hills? We'll just pull off somewhere, just me and him, and jam. And we did that a couple times. Then there was like a party idea put together where he was connected with so many bands, always great bands too, like really badass. And he found this spot. There was these gunnery towers in I think the Hollywood Hills. Forgive me if I'm wrong, anybody listening to this. Anyway, it was in the hills of LA, these old gunner towers. And he figured out a way to get up to one of these things. And it was so cool because you'd be up there and you're overlooking on one side the valley, and on the other side, you're looking at Hollywood and West LA.
Are these turrets that were built like during World War II to protect the West Coast? Something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, trip out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we went up there, had a couple parties up there. So it actually started in LA, but Dave was inspired by Stuart Swayze's. Stuart did this thing. Have you seen the film Desolation Center?
I don't think I have. No.
It's a documentary about these parties that Stuart did back in the 80s. One was here and one was in Death Valley, up towards Lancaster area, or above. And then one was down here in the Coachella Valley in Thermal. He did it in a spot actually where me and Dave Travis did one of our biggest generator parties. This had already happened 10 years prior, or maybe 7 years prior, by Stuart. Had Sonic Youth, the Minutemen, Red Cross, and some other. God, I'm spacing on it. But anyway, so Dave filmed at that party. Dave archived all kinds of stuff on video. He was always videotaping. He was never at a show without his camera. He was just he's got, oh my God.
He had to capture things. He was one of those guys that always had to document. Yeah.
He filmed every single night at his club. Every night was filmed, and he would go live to Facebook, But anyway, so Dave got this, like, he saw that happen, and that kind of was like, gave him the idea, like, this, we can go out in the middle of nowhere and blow shit up. We can go rock and roll wherever, So that got the generator thing started. So Dave had the little generator. We started doing those things. Then once I moved back here to the low desert, then I was always looking for spots. And we started right away. I mean, I was probably home a few months, and we started doing them regularly. And I bought myself a proper bigger generator. But man, once we tasted that freedom where we didn't have to mess with the club, we didn't have to mess with, a booking agent or this and that. We had to build our own little infrastructure. We had to get the PA, the lights, just all little stuff, but the taste of freedom was so addictive because we could do whatever we want. We couldn't make money at it. I mean, there was no way you couldn't put a fence around where we were going out and like have a gate. So
did you get like donations and things?
No.
I mean, just for the fuel and stuff like that, or that was all just self-funded and everyone just come and drink for free?
I think once in a while we would we'd have somebody stand there and take $2 for a cup at the keg. Mm. But I can't even recall actually doing that. But I think it happened. But no, we'd buy the keg more for our consumption than the crowd, but the crowd would enjoy. We'd buy 2 or 3 kegs. We always had the pump thing. We'd throw the kegs in a trash can full of ice. This is pre-internet days, so we'd make a flyer with a map. We'd hit the high school, which was a bust. So we stopped doing that. And people, the word of mouth on a Friday night, man, it would just get out. And sometimes I scared the shit out of me. The amount of people that were showing up, I was just like, holy shit, this is crazy,
What were some of the early lessons you learned the hard way?
Wow. There's a lot. There's a lot of those. I think one of the big ones, just to spring off the generator party thing, was assuming everyone is like-minded and being responsible for bringing people together and not having a plan to keep them safe, to keep it safe and organized enough where it's a safe and sound thing for people. And yet, you just kind of selfishly just want as many people to come as possible, but then you get people out into the middle of nowhere and don't even think, well, do these people really understand what it means to be, 20 miles out in the middle of the desert in pitch black with nothing but beer to drink, and a car that could easily get stuck in the sand and no place to go to the bath, just, right. and then assuming that everyone is going to be cool and drink till their heart's content and not get violent or not get weird. So the fall of the generator party was a little microcosm into, to just people's inability to be responsible for their own well-being and others. And it was like, there was a like-minded situation. It grew to a point where then this other element took over. It kind of reminded me of a miniature version of when you watch those videos of the last Woodstock, that when, I don't know if you've seen that documentary, the Woodstock, it's such a bummer. And like, we kind of had that happen. It got to a point where people were coming because they heard there was alcohol, and you're in the middle of nowhere where there was no rules. And when there's alcohol and no rules and people to like show off to, you're asking for problems, and they
Right.
came. We had stabbings, we had really gnarly violence. We had a horrible situation at one of our legendary venues called the Nudist Colony, which is an actual nudist colony in the hills above Palm Springs. It was built in the 50s and abandoned, but the swimming pool remained. Swimming pool became a famous skate spot. It's a beautiful pool, still exists to this day. That's a whole story into itself. But one of the last parties there, actually one of the last real parties there, ended up in a horrible fire that almost trapped, hundreds of people up there. And I mean, cars were abandoned and burnt out, and people got out. Nobody got injured, but it was close. And after all that, we were just like, nah, this isn't just the people that come for the music, come for the vibe, come for the beautiful view while you're listening to a band. You're looking at the 10 freeway snake off over into Phoenix and the stars and the San Jacinto Mountains. And it just became like, how much can we drink, get violent, get weird. And that was, I just kind of turned off on it at that point.
These generator parties sound like a microcosm of humanity.
It is.
Most people are cool, but all it takes is a couple of assholes acting like fools to ruin it for everyone.
Yeah, we used to joke about it being like, we used to say, somebody said, how was the party the other night? We're just like, dude, it got totally Lord of the Flies, man. It just got, it didn't go well. Somebody got thrown in the bonfire or their car got stuck. So they started smashing into another car to get it out of the way, whatever it was. But that being said, the freedom of that situation, those days, there's a reason why they're kind of folklorish and spoken and the subject of a lot of people's interviews and memories of those days, is because it was an incredible thing. It's a very special venue, and it fostered this kind of like freedom of expression that is a kind of a rare thing. I'm not saying it's, doesn't happen in the nightclub scene, or it doesn't happen and every place has, like, the kids go to the beach and play their stuff and do their thing and cut loose, or the guys go into the mountains and do their thing. Well, here it was the desert, so.
Yeah, you work with what you got.
You work with what you got, man. Yeah.
So when it came to the bands that were playing at those parties, was it kind of a jam session? Was there a sequence of bands? How did you organize the music?
We did both. We did both. Yawning Man and Across the River used to go out by ourselves. We went out by ourselves more than we actually organized parties. We'd load up our stuff and just go out just to jam. So we'd set up next to the pool up at the Nudist Colony, or we'd go out to Edom Hill or the Iron Door in India or Mecca Banks. These are all spots where we just show up, maybe on a Saturday afternoon. We set up our barbecue, set up the gear, fire up the generator, ice chest full of beer, and just jam. Sometimes take some shroomies, maybe some tabs, and jam. Yawning Man, we go and sometimes we even stay overnight and just go and play and play and play. When we set up a party, we tried to model it after a show. We'd try to have some sort of schedule, and we brought bands down. We've been bringing bands down from LA for years and years and years. We had, back in the old days, we always bring in SST bands, Bazooka, SWA, Overpass, Slovenly, like all these guys. And Celebrity Skin, Alternatives, Obsessed. I can't, the list is infinitum.
So the word of these generator parties was really kind of all over. It sounds like it was it went quite wide across Southern California.
It did. The last one that I did, I got in big trouble I got fined and arrested for it. Me and Travis, it was our last hurrah. We called it the Splattering of Tribes. And the lineup, I wish I could remember the full lineup right now. It was like Pygmy Love Circus, 11, Tex and the Horseheads. My band, the Sort of Quartet, was going to play, which is basically Yawning Man. And there was like 11, 12 bands. I'm spacing on the lineup right now. It was fucking years and years. We picked a spot in Mecca that is so beautiful. If you're ever driving through this area, you'll see it off the 10 freeway. If you're driving through Palm Springs, you're headed towards Phoenix, keep a lookout for a sign that says the road to Mecca. And it's called the Painted Canyons. And you get off on that road and you'll drive through. I can only describe it as a miniature Grand Canyon. Imagine like driving through the riverbed of the Grand Canyon, but it's like a quarter of the size. I can't even describe how bitchin' this place is, but we found a spot there. Dave at the time was, he worked with Golden Voice from the early days. He was a flyer slapper for Golden Voice. And so he knew all those guys. And so he knew the Rat Sound dudes too. And the Rat Sound guys actually they're so ingrained with Golden Voice. The Rat Sound has overseen the front of house production for the Coachella Festival since day one. So they have this long history out here. And we always trace it to the Splattering of the Tribes, because that was their first gig in the Coachella Valley, was our generator party. And so my job was show up at 6 a.m. and wait for the Rat Sound truck. And of course, I was coordinating, me and Dave were coordinating everything, but Dave was in LA. He wasn't coming down until about 4. So I showed up, it was like 15 minutes from my house. I was living in La Quinta at the time. So I drive out there, it's August. It's gonna be like idiots. We put this thing in the middle of summer. It's gonna be 110 degrees by 11 a.m. And I'm waiting for a truck full of PA gear so we can set it up in the middle of the hottest area. You look at Mecca Thermal in the summertime in the Coachella Valley, it's the absolute hottest city in the whole valley. I think last summer it got up to 122, 125 degrees. And so 6:30 in the morning, I'm sitting out there waiting for the truck. And 2 or 3 cars start showing up it's not even 7. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Hey man, is this where the party is? I'm like, where the hell? Yeah, where are you guys from? Oh, we come down from San Francisco. Oh, I'm from Sacramento. I'm like, what the fuck? How did you hear about this? And then I got scared. I was like, okay, it's 7:00. There's a guy from Sacramento here. This is going to get spooky. And it absolutely got very, very spooky. So, Rat Sound shows up, big panel truck full of huge PA gear. Huge. I mean, back then, those guys were like proud of the massive cabinets. They would it was just like this massive visual thing. It was like the Grateful Dead wall of sound, and they used to build guitar cabinets for Greg Ginn, and they were like these fucking Incredible. It was like a wall for a guitar. One guitar guy had this fucking wall, So they set up the PA, but people start coming. They don't stop. This is a 2-lane highway, one lane each way, sand on both sides, through this valley, darkest place you can fucking imagine. If you turn your headlights off, the starlight is all you got. That's it. I mean, you can't see your hand in front of your face. So we guesstimated there was probably about 1,500, 2,000 people there. No place to park. People started blocking one another in. We had no toilets. We had no trash cans. All we had was a PA, a bunch of beer, and a bunch of bands, and nothing else. No water, no. So when you talk about hard lessons, this was a big one. It ended up, we had some Vatos come from India. They heard about the party. They came out and they were going through people's cars, breaking into stuff. They had their eyes set on somebody was driving some vintage Chevy wagon, a husband and wife. And this car was kind of trapped in other cars that had pulled off the road. Well, these guys tried to break into the car. They were going to try to steal it, I guess. And the guy caught him, approached him, and one of the Vatos hit him over the head with a tire iron or wrench, cracked his head open. His wife came running up to me. I was standing behind the mixing board where we had tacos. That was the other thing we had. We had tacos. We were trying to sell chili verde tacos while we were doing the party. And she came up. She said, "Where's the first aid tent?" And I said, I don't have. I didn't even have a first aid kit. I didn't even have. I think I had a couple jugs of water. Is the closest thing I had to first aid. And that was it. That was it. I mean, I was trying to figure out how to get him to the hospital. My van was stuck. My van was trapped. We made announcements. Can anybody drive out of here? Does anybody know that their car is accessible? It was at that point I realized we really fucked up. We did something really irresponsible. And his visit to the ER sent a chopper, the CHP chopper, over the party, and that was it. Then they sent out about 10 squad cars and busted the whole thing up. And I got arrested. Dave didn't, but me and my cousin, because we owned the generator, we ended up with big fines and stuff. And the news came out and they filmed me cleaning up trash the next day. And they called it, on the local news, they call it the heavy metal mess. Heavy metal mess in Mecca. Because thousands of concert goers leave trash all over the place. And I felt horrible about the trash. I mean, I cleaned it all up, but it was bad. It was like, this isn't cool. Yeah. This is not cool.
Well, that could have been the first time you had to deal with all the garbage in the aftermath. I would imagine
no, but many times, but never from 2,000 people. It was usually, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot of people. Usually the parties were like a couple hundred, and it was easy to clean up. And you're dealing with people most of the time they kind of 12 back, they throw it back in the car. But this thing was just, when you go to a rock festival and it's just like people just throw their cups and throw their shit everywhere because they know somebody else is going to clean it all up,
Yeah. Yeah. Each person brings 6 to 8 beers. So you have to deal with all the bottles, the containers, aftermath of it. Yeah. So as you're doing these parties in the desert, and word is getting out, apparently, all over California, it would seem. Are you starting to get the LA record company people sniffing around? Are you getting any of that? People wondering what's going on in this scene and maybe how they could exploit it?
I never sensed, I don't think I ever sensed that. Well, I think I was aware of it. If it was happening, I really wasn't aware of it. The first inclinations I got of wow, this little music scene we have is reaching outside of here, and there's interest in the music industry was with Kaya's. And I'm not sure. I was just having this conversation with Brant from Brant Bjork from Caius and his own solo career and stuff. Stoner and Brant Bjork and Fu Manchu. But he was telling me, the kind of the story of how the interest came. It wasn't so much to do with the generator parties as it was about them getting outside of here and playing some shows in LA and people going, wow, what is that? And one guy says to another guy, you got to see these guys. They're pretty incredible. And that, they end up with a manager, and the manager is hardworking and called in this guy and this guy and this guy. And that was the first time, like, to us, it was so, us meaning the older desert punk rock guys that kind of just were toiling in obscurity and almost wore it as, and I know Brant and Josh talk about this a lot, Josh Homme. They talk about the punk rock guilt of the desert, and it's like this thing of, well, do well, but don't do too well, it's like, it's like to maintain respect among, and there was this thing, it was weird. It was almost like a motorcycle club or something. Like you had to maintain respect of your peers, and there's like these unspoken rules of what it means to be like, in the ditches punk rocker and keep that, that ethic and that kind of thing. And I don't know if maybe my group of friends is responsible for a lot of that, because we were, me and my cousin always use that term, toiling in obscurity. And it's so great because it's where we're comfortable. And it's like the biggest excuse for having zero business sense when it comes to the music business. We're like more comfortable digging ditches, washing dishes, than greeting people at the door, or being a contractor. It's like I'd rather be the ditch digger than the contractor. Now, what sense does that make? Is that like, well, I'd just rather be responsible for the task in front of me, execute that task, and then be free to go on without all the other worries and responsibilities. I mean, where does that mentality come from? It's like, I've resisted trying to make 2 cents in the music business since day one. And to this day, it's like, I want to give it away. I feel like my bandmates have had to go, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Why would you agree to drive to San Francisco to play for $300 when it's going to cost us twice that just to do what the fuck? People are, we have a level of respect here. We can do it. It's like that. And I continue to have that mentality. I don't know where it comes from, but the first signs of the music industry going, that's good, we can do something with that. It was like, oh, no, that's evil, that's bad. That, we have to maintain art. We have to toil in obscurity, or we're not the artists that we've become.
It would seem that sort of mentality would. Just breaking it down, it's either externally generated through peer pressure, like you don't want to do too much better than your friends or your community, or you'll be shunned, or they'll feel bad and it'll start to kind of get weird between you. There's the external part, influence, and then there's the internal influence, which sounds like you're describing. It's almost like a caste system in places like India or, overseas cultures where you're born a servant or of that sort of culture or occupation, and that's where you stay, and you don't marry above it, and you certainly don't marry below it. That's more of a societal construct. I don't know. That's, in my experience, either external with peers or internal, holding yourself back. What do you think it is?
I think it's both. That's perfect. What you just described. It's both. And there's a fear of having any kind of. I know the guys in Caius and with the Caius and the Queens of the Stone Age popularity and the subsequent tentacles of career stuff that happened. You gotta understand, those guys nobody in the world would know what the fuck we were doing, meaning Yawning Man, Sort of Quartet, Fatso, Jetson, if it weren't for those guys. None of it. We've gone to Europe to play for the last 15 years. We've released records upon records. Well, all these opportunities, this interest, this spotlight, or when I say spotlight, that is kind of a lame thing, but the illumination of this music scene came through their work in engaging in the music industry, and not just staying in this weird little netherworld. But yet, I know from being around this scene and now watching it objectively as an objective person through social media and stuff, and all the changes that all these musicians have been through that gain popularity, and watching the way people process it, and the opinions they have. It's absolutely both of those things. It's like people they want you to live up to their expectations of what they think you are. And if you don't do that, then they ostracize you. It's so strange, but whatever. It is what it is with any,
And that external kind of peer activity, that is quite often generated from the peers' own insecurities. So their inability to see you in a different way than they're either used to, or the story that they've told themselves about things.
Here's a perfect example. Exactly. Nirvana. Okay, so here's Nirvana, for all intents and purposes, exactly like they grew up in the same music trajectory of Yawning Man or Caius or any of the punk rock bands from the desert. They just, three dudes were into punk rock, into stuff, started playing, doing stuff, and just something happened. The trajectory changed at a certain point. But because they grew up with this artistic, expressive ethic in this scene, and I mention them because they're really, we have a lot of similarities in what we grew up listening to, the music scene. I mean, you're talking about the SST people, you're talking about the Melvins guys. Like this is the same kind of like weird world that we came up from. So I really have an intimate kind of understanding of where those guys were coming from. I watched, never mind Queens of the Stone Age or Caius. Look at Nirvana, look at what they went through. They went from being an obscure toiling in obscurity, weirdo punk rock, basically a punk rock group of bros fucking hitting the road in a fucking Volkswagen van, to the cover of Rolling Stone Insanity. And look how they handled it in different ways. It's like, I sensed that Kurt Cobain was never comfortable with it. Why not enjoy success? Why not enjoy? I totally understand why, because he created an identity for himself that he respected about himself through his artistic integrity and feeling that he was an honest artist. Mm-hmm. And Dave Grohl, who, as well as I believe an honest artist and with integrity, was processed it differently. It's like, this is fun. This is rad. I'm going to enjoy this. And now you can see the success that when you enjoy it and you enjoy the opportunities, and you can kind of like take them and make them your own. Mm-hmm. And I think he's done that. He's done that with his creative process with films and with documentaries and with the studio and with this. You see how two different people, but I totally relate to the way that Nirvana handled, or didn't handle, I'll say, their success, because they were like, fuck, everything that was important to us, that gang mentality of like, we're fucking doing this because we love to fucking do it, and we're doing it our way. Fuck you. This is our art. This is our fucking heart and soul we're doing here. And then to have it turned into a product is embarrassing. It doesn't matter that they were all given the opportunity to buy homes and new cars and be financially secure. That shit didn't mean anything compared to, fuck, this is fucking embarrassing, man. This is shameful. Like now, that like thing of like battling that is so weird, where other people's ideas of success are completely in the materialistic. These guys' ideas of success, I don't know, I'm not bros or brothers with these guys, but I from coming from a similar place, I would think their idea of success is respect as an artist and being proud of the work that they do on an artistic level, not on a monetarily popularity driven success level. Mm-hmm. And this, I think that these bands, this conversation started with, did I sense things were changing? Didn't have anything to do with the Generator Parties. The Generator Party was a good story. And it's a unique thing about this scene. And it definitely changed the way some of the music was created and sounds. The sounds were created because of that environment. But I think that the industry in general became interested in the music from here because of those things, because those elements made the music unique and it was a unique, honest, raw approach. It wasn't cookie cutter. And that, by proxy ended up with interest because it made something unique and awesome. And, but it wasn't the Generator Party. The Generator Party was just part of the environment that created the grooviness.
Yeah, I always, and the way I see it, and let me know if you think differently, but the Generator Parties enabled the bands to jam, rehearse, work ideas through. It wasn't like verse, chorus, verse type songs, you'd see traditionally.
Totally.
It was I don't know if you've heard that theory, it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. The Generator Parties enabled bands, and just being in the desert enabled bands like you guys to be able to practice and play 10, hours or so per day and just work things out and get good at your craft, and then be able to distill the best parts of that, or the parts that you feel best with, onto a record or put that out in the world. There was that, and also the sound of being in the desert. I would imagine a lot of the sonic qualities of the sort of, music we're talking about here had a lot to do with the environment, because, you need to hit the cymbals a lot to be heard in a desert without walls. You need to have those sort of tribal kind of drums to even carry the sound, so other musicians and people in that small physical space can hear it. That's what I think of in terms of how the generator parties and how that environment enabled that sound of the 90s and beyond.
A good example of what you're talking about is the environment you're in, especially a drastic, extreme environment like playing music outdoors in the middle of nowhere versus a rehearsal room or a garage or a nightclub stage. Especially improvising and the like when you mentioned verse chorus thing. Okay, so when you're out on this mesa playing, it even though the roots of those parties were punk, we were out there playing punk rock pretty much. It didn't fit. It was like, it just happened to be that we're in the desert playing these songs, and people are free to just roll up, have a bonfire, and crack beer. But with Yawning Man, and Across the River touched on this for sure, but Yawning Man really developed it, was a sound and a vibe as a musician playing a vibration with the environment that you're in that fit. So it felt like you're working together in this way, kind of like when you go to a rock show and there's projections and there's lighting that just completely adds to the experience of the music you're watching and hearing. Well, this was like that, but provided by God. It was like, there was no artistic direction needed, because the music we're creating fit where we're doing it, and the vibe, the wind blowing through the wind knocking the cymbals over and blowing through our hair, and the sand getting in our face, and we're in the middle of this fucking crazy jam. That just like totally worked. And it didn't, it wasn't always like magic, I'm not saying, but it affected the way the band wrote, and it affected the way the band to this day, like it's this thing, it's this part of the way we sound. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time at all. I just, it felt right. But going out to the mesa and playing like verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, guitar solo, it doesn't fit. Yeah. It's still rad and it's fun and it's a cool place to go play music, but it doesn't fit where you are, Mm-hmm. So it just kind of like that. A local musician put it really well, and I wish I knew the quote, but it's this guy, Robbie Rob, and he made a comment, and I think he may have been talking actually about Gary Arcee's guitar playing at the time, or something that he related to, was that, yelling and screaming over three chords, it doesn't fit when you're out in this beauty, in this desolate beauty. It's like it can, but when you play to the environment, the music kind of takes on its own character. Oh, yeah.
Well, I would think that there's much more of a door open up for kind of spiritual connections, especially with the band. Absolutely. If you're under the stars, especially if you got a few mushrooms.
A nudge, yeah.
Chemical nudge. So in your history, your music's been on so many different labels. and over several decades now. Do you have control of all your music now? Do you know where it's all at, where the rights are and everything?
We'll be back after these messages.
Psst. Well, hey everyone, it's Nate here. Look, I know this is a super long episode, so rather than running our sponsor ads again, can I give a plug for our Patreon page here? Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide, where right now there is an extended interview with Mario up there. It's about another 30 minutes. And it's totally commercial free. And quite frankly, I'm sure you all know podcasts make pretty much no money and only really exist because of two things. One, the passion and drive of the creator. And number two, the support of the audience. And that's what I'm here to ask you for. Please consider supporting the show, $5 or $10 a month, whatever you can afford. Because if you're listening to this now, some hour and 10 minutes into the episode, that's great. You're enjoying it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. For that, I would ask you to please consider supporting the show. Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. It's super important. It's like a direct lifeline to us here, and it's a huge signal, and the support is so welcome and helps keep this podcast going. Each week I put extra stuff up there, extended interviews, and it's all ad-free, and it's early, and it's all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you politely, please support the Vinyl Guide, patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. All right, that's it. Back to the show.
Now we return to the program already in progress.
No limits.
In your history, your music's been on so many different labels and over several decades now. Do you have control of all your music now? Do you know where it's all at, where the rights are and everything?
We do have control over everything except the stuff that we recorded for SST Records.
Okay.
So, yeah, that is all Sestone music. We actually, everything else we control. We have a wonderful relationship with three people that we work with: Heavy Psych Sounds, Ripple, and for years and years with I used to work for a vinyl distribution warehouse in Los Angeles called Cobra Side.
Okay.
And there's a mom and pop distributor that handled Cobra Side handled for years all of Brant's stuff. They pressed and distributed all of his stuff, all of Fu Manchu's vinyl, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, the Eels, the list goes on. Some of it's changed over the last few years. Brant's taken his catalog elsewhere, and Fu Manchu as well. Repress a couple things with Ripple. We repressed a couple things with Heavy Psych Sounds. Fatso Jetson has most of our stuff still with Cobra Side. They're not. It's not a record label per se, but we treat it like a label. But the band is responsible for all the marketing, for getting the record out there.
Right.
So in essence, it's like, but Randy from Cobra Side is a great old friend, and he keeps us in print. But we, with the exception of the SST stuff for Fatso Jetson and the Sort of Quartet, which is basically what Yawning Man morphed into, is the Sort of Quartet. And this is a band, I think, for your guys that are interested in hearing what I have to say, might be interested in this music if they haven't heard it. And it's one of the most, I'm the most proud, I think, of this work that I've done with the Sort of Quartet over the years. As much as with Fatso Jetson or Yawning Man, the Sort of Quartet was a really pivotal thing for us as musicians. It was when we really discovered, like, wow, we can really fucking do whatever we want here with music. And I encourage people that if you like Yawning Man, or if you like Fatso Jetson, to seek out the sort of quartet on YouTube or wherever the hell you got to look for it, because it's really pretty rare to find any of the stuff. I think you can find some of it on Discogs, of course, but
yeah, and that's
it's out there. But yeah,
and a lot of the material that you've written, a lot of the material you've been involved in on SST and some of the other labels are CD only. A lot of the Fatso Jetson material CD only. Any thoughts, any ability to one day perhaps take that to vinyl? Is there that? Is the door open somewhere for that?
We just did Cruel and Delicious with the label from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
That was never on vinyl. That vinyl that you see there, that splatter, the first of that record on vinyl. Mm-hmm. So that was super exciting to do that, because it was a CD only release on Records, which was Josh Homme's label. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, they eventually started working with Epicac to facilitate the releases. Yes, again, everything but the SST stuff will eventually be reissued on vinyl for sure, meaning Flames for All, which was our Man's Ruin release. And because that did come out on vinyl, but as a 10-inch, and it was limited to only 5 songs, and the recording session was more, of course. So but we're going to reissue that. And, you know, Frank Kozik's been wonderful, so awesome in letting us do whatever we wanted with his art. He let us use his image for t-shirt design. He even let me make a shirt of the Desert Sessions cover that I was part of. We were going out on the road and we were performing a bunch of the tunes from that, Eccentric Man and these. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to have that t-shirt with the, you know, with it's a image he did with Fonda from Easy Rider. And he's, oh, fuck yeah, dude, go for it, man. He's a good dude, and a very supportive guy. And when the label folded, Pete Stahl was in touch with him. He had, you know, his projects on there, and also was kind of a connection there, as well as Lydia Russell. She was a label manager, I believe, at the time. They sent us all our CDs. They just sent them. They're like, well, you know, we can't do anything with this stuff here. Take it, guys. So that was a great thing. But yes, to answer your question, everything that we have the rights to, we're going to repress on vinyl as the opportunity arises. Right. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, that one of my direct questions was about Flames for All on vinyl. So you've answered that. Do you know where all the multi-track and master tapes are?
I do. Well, yes. I have here in my garage not only ours, but I also have like Nebula. I have the first Sun, I believe, Suno. Stuff that was recorded by Matthias Schneeberger at our studio, and we went in together on a studio in Arcadia, California, where a bunch of stuff just was happening at the time. Saw the Fatso stuff that was recorded there. I have the 2-inch tapes. I also have like Power of 3, which was a 16 track. I have that. I have the Across the River live at County Line, which was going to come out on SST. Never did. We were talking about releasing that, but I got to get back with Scott Reeder about that. He had some different ideas that maybe we would just release it for free and not make an actual product, just put it out on the internet. So we're still we haven't talked about that in a long time, but yeah, I have most of the 2-inch reels from that stuff. I might be missing 1 or 2 of the sort of quartet, but we've got most of it.
So, number 1, that's good that you have it. Number 2, I'm a little worried, Mario, because you live in a very hot environment. So, the condition of those tapes, they need to be kept in a particular environment. So that,
there may be toast. Actually, the Fatso stuff is probably toast. I was going to tell you this whole story. We don't have time now, but I'm going to tell you that when you asked me about my record collection, there was a period where I bought a house in high desert. And there was a period where I was touring a lot, and I was gonna live here, tour. I went off on tour. My wife was in the home. She was somewhere else, and we have a problem with squatters up here. So people will break into your house and fucking live there. And it's like the old West up here in some spots, you know. Well, some people took over the house. I had my whole record collection in the garage, and when I finally got them out, they stole everything. I had, I don't know, I want to say thousands. I was definitely several hundred records. I had a huge collection, especially, like I said before, punk rock and jazz and classic rock. They took all of it. They left me 2 milk crates. And the stuff they left me was like my stuff, like Fatso Jetson records and Yawning Man records and some shit I had. They took it all. And what they must have known that they could sell it to a record store, or I checked the local record store in the high desert. They didn't have any pieces, but my whole collection's gone. So I'm starting from scratch. They took my stereo. They took every vintage amplifiers, guitars, everything. So I lost my collection, but they didn't take those reels because they're heavy and they're big and they're but they were 3-4 hot summers without air conditioning. When I lived in LA, they were air conditioned because they were stored at the studio. But now, when I moved down here, I took all the reels. I'll send you a picture. I've got a bunch of interesting stuff, but they've been through. I had to bake the Across the River stuff. I was able to salvage it. I got one transfer out of it. I transferred those files digitally to DAT and DVD or CD. So I have those on a disc. And Scott Reeder's since uploaded those files into his studio in Hemet. But you're right, dude. I think the Fatso stuff's probably.
Well, what was the story of the Across the River almost coming out on SST and then not?
We played a generator party on Malibu County line on the beach. It was Firehose' first show on the West Coast. Was Firehose, Lawndale, Saccharine Trust, a band called Equidemius, and Across the River. And we were approached by Chuck, he's like, I'm going to record this whole show on 16 track or 8 track. I'm going to record the whole show. And SST is going to release it. A couple tunes from each band, live from SST. At the time, Across the River was playing a lot of these events called SST Fests, and they were usually at like Al's Bar or the Anti Club in LA or Raji's, and they were rad. We played with like Vitus. We played with Firehose a few times. Always SST bands. So we signed a contract that day and played our set, and nothing ever came of it. Phil Newman from Sin 34, Spinhead Studios, partner with Dave Markey and Mike Glass, and we were friends. And when Phil passed away very untimely, passing, his archive of recordings were gifted to Dave Markey, And Dave Markey's a filmmaker, very creative dude. He put out the movie The Year Punk Broke, filmed Nirvana and Sonic Youth on tour, and also I've had a relationship with him for years. We did the Love Dolls movies together. The Dead Issue was recorded at his studio for that soundtrack, which also featured like Black Flag, White Flag, Red Cross, all those bands. And this is part of this connection that I described early in our interview with the Red Cross guys, was also with Dave Markey and Dave Travis and those guys. So yeah, after Phil passed away, he called me. He's all, dude, I have these tapes. Do you want them? And I was like, fuck yeah, I got them. Immediately transferred them because of what you're discussing, the degeneration of the analog tape. And they were amazing. I mean, it's a fucking great recording. So, it's unfortunate that stuff is just kind of sitting there, and people ask about it every time there's a post on social media about Across the River. They're like, what's going on with that? Can we hear it? You're going to put it out? But it's not just me. It's other guys I got to consider here. And if it was me, it would have been out a long time ago. Just because it's fun to release stuff, and I'm sure it would do well. If we wanted to think about it from a standpoint of selling a few records, I'm sure it would do well. It's got some increased focus because of Scott and Alfredo playing in Caius and that stuff. But I think it'd be great to do what Scott wants to do and just put a mix of it up available on YouTube, or whatever, and just so people can hear it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Or put a download up for free, We'll see.
Mario, you've been incredibly generous with your time and your information. Thank you very much for spending time here. I'd love to have you back on one of these days. I get the feeling we just kind of scratched the surface of some of this stuff, but you've really shared a lot of great information. I do appreciate it, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. So grateful. Thanks, brother.
No worries. Mario, again, thanks for the years and years of music. Again, I always enjoy whatever projects you're involved in. I can just put them on, and it's always a mood lifter for me. Everyone, please check it out for yourself. There's several different bands. There's Fatso Jetson. There's Yawning Man. You could even go online and try to find some of those Across the River demos from 1985. They sound incredible. A lot of different projects. You could also go to plasticcactus.com. That's 1C. Ripple-music.com has the new Yawning Man live at Giant Rock on vinyl as well. You could go to Bandcamp. There's several releases there from Yawning Man and Fatso Jetson and the like. And Mario, again, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor speaking with you, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Hey, thank you so much.
Oh man, I gotta have him back on. I could talk to him all day. Mr. Mario Lalli, Yawning Man, Fatso Jetson, Across the River, all those generator parties. What great stories. And by the way, just, I know he talked about the Across the River demos. Go on YouTube, turn them on, listen to them, turn them up. They're fantastic. And of course, pick up some vinyl from ripple-music.com and Mario's very own plasticcactus.com, 1C. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes across your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter. Let your friends know. Let your record store owners know. Make sure your music community knows about The Vinyl Guide podcast. That is hugely appreciated. And you can even leave us a positive review on iTunes. Jump up there and give us 5 out of 5 or 10 out of 10 stars. Say something nice. Make us blush. That is always appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.